Your person and their brother had a secret discussion about you. What came to light changed everything. Something happened behind a closed door that your person never expected would become a turning point in the way they see you. It was late. The house had gone unusually quiet, but in one room, two brothers were having a conversation that neither of them planned to have that night. Your name came up almost casually at first. Then the tone changed. Your person stopped defending their feelings and started admitting things they had kept buried for far too long. Their brother noticed the hesitation in their voice. He noticed the way they looked down at the floor before answering a simple question. And then he asked something that seemed harmless but landed much deeper than expected. What are you really going to do about them? Your person didn't answer immediately. There was a long silence. The kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Because what came next wasn't about whether they cared about you. That part was already obvious. The real question was whether they were finally ready to stop hiding it. Their brother had been watching everything from a distance. The small changes. The way your person checked their phone and then smiled without realizing it. The way your person became unusually quiet whenever your name was mentioned. Even the little things they tried to explain away didn't escape him. So when the conversation finally became honest, he didn't tease them. He didn't judge them. He simply listened. Your person admitted that something about you had stayed with them long after conversations ended. They confessed that there were moments when they wanted to reach out, but pride, uncertainty, or fear of making the wrong move stopped them. Then their brother said something that made your person look up immediately. He reminded them that sometimes the person we keep questioning is the very person we've already answered ourselves about. Your person didn't argue. Instead, they sat there quietly, replaying memories in their mind. A conversation with you. A look you gave them. A moment when you showed patience instead of walking away. Suddenly, details they had once considered ordinary began looking completely different. But there was one part of that discussion that your person hadn't prepared for. Their brother asked what they believed you thought about them now. And for the first time that night, your person looked genuinely vulnerable. They admitted they weren't sure. They wondered whether you had already moved on emotionally, whether you had stopped waiting for clarity, whether their hesitation had made you believe they simply didn't care. Their brother leaned back and said nothing for a moment. Then he asked a question that changed the entire direction of the conversation. What if they were never asking you to be perfect? What if they were only waiting for you to be honest? Your person went completely still. That sentence hit a place they had been avoiding. Because suddenly, the issue wasn't your feelings. It was theirs. And somewhere inside that quiet room, they realized they had been spending far too much time trying to understand what might happen instead of admitting what they already knew. But their brother wasn't finished. He had one more thing to reveal. Something connected to you that your person had never considered before, and when they heard it, their entire expression changed. The next sentence came quietly, almost casually, but it changed the temperature in the room. Your person's brother looked at them and said, "You keep talking about what they might feel. Have you ever stopped to think about what your actions have already told them?" Your person didn't respond. Their eyes dropped again, and for several seconds, neither brother spoke. Because suddenly, the conversation wasn't about some distant possibility. It was about consequences. Every delayed message. Every unfinished conversation. Every moment when your person almost said what they felt and then pulled back. Their brother reminded them that people eventually stop waiting for explanations when they've been given too much uncertainty. And that was the part your person couldn't dismiss. They realized you may have been quietly protecting your own heart while they were busy protecting their own hesitation. Then came an unexpected confession. Your person admitted that the reason they had been holding back wasn't because they felt less, it was because they felt more than they knew how to handle. But then their brother revealed something your person hadn't expected to hear. He said he had noticed something about you too. Not from some dramatic discovery, but from the way you had handled situations involving your person. You hadn't demanded attention. You hadn't tried to force an answer. You had simply remained genuine. That detail mattered. Because your person had been wondering whether your patience meant you didn't care enough. Their brother saw it differently. He said that sometimes the strongest indication of someone's feelings isn't how loudly they speak, but how carefully they treat something they don't want to destroy. Your person became visibly emotional, not because the conversation was painful, but because pieces of the puzzle were finally connecting. They started remembering the times you could have reacted differently but chose understanding instead. The moments you gave them space without making them feel forgotten. The conversations that seemed small at the time but stayed in their mind afterward. And then your person said something that made their brother smile. Maybe I've been looking at this all wrong. If you're enjoying this story and you know someone who would understand a moment like this, feel free to share it with them, and if you want more stories built around these unexpected emotional revelations, you can subscribe and stay close. Still, there was one question neither brother had answered. Why had your name become important enough for them to have this private conversation in the first place? The answer came when your person finally opened up about a moment they hadn't told anyone about. They described a recent situation where something reminded them of you unexpectedly. It could have been a familiar place, a simple phrase, or even a song playing somewhere in the background. Whatever it was, the memory hit harder than they expected. They realized they weren't simply remembering you. They were imagining what it would feel like if you were actually beside them again. Their brother listened carefully before asking, "So what are you waiting for?" Your person smiled nervously, then admitted they didn't have a perfect answer. They were afraid of saying too much, too soon. Afraid that honesty might change the relationship. But their brother gave them a different perspective. Staying silent was already changing it. That realization settled over the room. Your person reached for their phone, stared at your name for several seconds, and then stopped. Because just before they made a decision, their brother remembered one final detail, something he had learned about you that could completely change what your person chooses to do next. The phone remained in your person's hand, but they didn't press your name. Something had shifted. A few minutes earlier, they had been talking about you like a question they couldn't solve. Now, they were beginning to understand that you might have been waiting for something much simpler, honesty. Their brother watched them carefully and asked, if you could say one thing to them right now, without worrying about how they'd react, what would it be? Your person stared at the screen. Their thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then they whispered an answer so quietly that their brother almost missed it. I'd tell them I never stopped caring. The room went silent again. Not because the words were shocking, but because they sounded like the truth your person had been avoiding. Their brother didn't interrupt. He let the confession breathe. And then he asked the question that mattered even more, then why have you been acting like you did? That question exposed the contradiction your person had been carrying. Their feelings had remained steady while their behavior had been uncertain. They had assumed that if they waited long enough, the right moment would somehow appear on its own. But their brother pointed out something they couldn't ignore: important moments rarely announce themselves. Sometimes you create them by finally having the conversation you've been postponing. Your person began thinking about you differently. Not as someone they needed to figure out, but as someone whose feelings deserved clarity. They remembered your patience, your consistency, the little ways you showed that you cared without demanding anything in return. Then their brother mentioned something that made your person sit forward immediately. He said, "You know what I think they're going to remember most? Not what you say next. What you do next." That sentence landed differently. Because your person suddenly understood that a beautiful explanation would mean very little if nothing changed afterward. And for the first time that night, they weren't searching for another excuse. They were thinking about taking action. Then came the revelation neither of them expected. Your person admitted that they had already imagined telling you the truth more than once. They had rehearsed conversations in their head while driving, while lying awake at night, even during ordinary moments when nobody around them knew what they were thinking. They knew what they wanted to say. They simply hadn't found the courage to say it aloud. Their brother smiled and told them something simple: maybe you don't need the perfect words. Maybe you just need the real ones. Your person looked at your name again. This time, the hesitation was different. It wasn't uncertainty about you. It was the nervousness that comes before someone finally steps beyond their comfort zone. Then they began typing. One sentence. Deleted. Another sentence. Deleted again. Finally, they stopped trying to make it perfect. They wrote what they actually felt. But just before they could send it, their brother noticed one sentence on the screen and immediately asked them to pause. Because that single sentence revealed something much bigger than either of them had realized, and it could change the entire meaning of this secret conversation. The sentence on the screen was only a few words long, but your person's brother immediately understood why it mattered. Your person had written, "I don't want to lose what we could become." Their brother looked at them and asked, "Is that really what you're afraid of?" Your person didn't answer right away. Instead, they locked the phone and leaned back, staring into the distance as if they were finally admitting something to themselves. They weren't afraid of your rejection as much as they were afraid that silence had already created distance they couldn't easily undo. For so long, they had treated the connection between you like something that could simply wait. But that night, their brother helped them see the truth: feelings can survive uncertainty, but relationships need movement. Your person realized that if they genuinely valued what existed between you, they couldn't keep expecting time to make the decision for them. And that realization brought a strange calm over them. The secret discussion wasn't becoming about whether you were right for them anymore. It was becoming about whether they were brave enough to stop standing at the edge. Their brother then asked them to think about one specific moment with you, the moment they first realized you were different. Your person smiled immediately. They remembered it without hesitation. It wasn't some huge dramatic event. It was something small. A moment when you noticed what they were feeling without demanding an explanation. A moment when you made them feel understood without trying to fix everything. That memory suddenly carried more weight than it had before. Your person realized that what attracted them to you wasn't simply chemistry or excitement. It was the feeling of being seen. Their brother noticed the change in their expression and said, "That's what you've been protecting all this time." Your person finally nodded. They admitted that they had been afraid of losing control because caring about you made them vulnerable in a way they weren't accustomed to. But now they understood that vulnerability wasn't necessarily weakness. Sometimes it was proof that something mattered. If this kind of unexpected emotional story speaks to you, you're welcome to share it with someone who might need to hear it, and you can subscribe if you'd like to stay for the next turn in this story. Then, just as the conversation seemed to be reaching its natural ending, their brother revealed why he had been so certain about you. He had noticed something your person hadn't. Whenever your name came up, their entire energy changed. The guarded expression disappeared. Their voice softened. Even their posture became lighter. It wasn't something your person could easily hide because genuine emotion has a way of appearing before words can control it. Their brother told them, "You don't talk about everyone like this." Your person laughed quietly, almost embarrassed, but they didn't deny it. Instead, they unlocked the phone again. This time, they didn't rewrite the message 10 times. They simply looked at it and pressed send. The room became completely still. No dramatic announcement. No immediate response. Just one message traveling toward you after weeks, perhaps months, of hesitation. Your person placed the phone down and exhaled as though they had finally released something they had been carrying alone. But neither brother knew what would happen when you saw those words. Because somewhere else, your phone was about to light up, and the message waiting on your screen contained a truth that could make you see this entire connection differently. The screen lit up at exactly the moment you least expected it. No warning. No build-up. Just your person's name appearing where you had almost stopped looking for it. For a second, you simply stared at the notification. There was something different about seeing their name this time. Maybe it was the timing. Maybe it was the fact that you hadn't expected them to reach out at all. You opened the message, and the first line made you pause. It wasn't a casual greeting. It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't another vague question designed to test the waters. Your person had finally chosen honesty. They told you they had been thinking about everything between you, especially the things they had left unsaid. They admitted that their silence hadn't meant indifference. In fact, it had often meant the opposite. They had been trying to understand emotions that became harder to ignore every time they saw your name. And then came the sentence that revealed why their brother's conversation had mattered so much. "Someone close to me asked me a question tonight that I couldn't keep avoiding." You read the message again. Then again. Because now you understood that something had happened behind the scenes. Your person continued, explaining that they had spoken with their brother about you. Not because they wanted to gossip or create drama, but because they needed an honest perspective from someone who knew them well. They admitted that their brother had challenged them to stop overthinking and start being truthful. Then your person confessed something they had never managed to say directly. They had been afraid that you didn't realize how important you had become to them. That admission changed the emotional weight of every previous interaction. The moments when they seemed distant suddenly looked different. The pauses in conversations had a different meaning. Even the times they disappeared into their own thoughts began making sense. They weren't necessarily walking away. They were wrestling with their own uncertainty. But there was more. Your person said their brother had helped them recognize something uncomfortable. They had been expecting you to understand feelings they had never clearly expressed. And they knew that wasn't fair to you. That was when the message became more personal. They told you they didn't want you to keep guessing. Then your person wrote something that made you stop scrolling. I don't know exactly where this leads, but I know I don't want to pretend it means nothing. That wasn't a promise wrapped in perfect words. It was something more believable. A person finally admitting the truth without knowing every chapter that comes after it. You could almost imagine them sitting somewhere quietly after sending it, wondering whether they had said too much. Their brother was probably still nearby, watching without interrupting. The conversation between those two had started with your name and uncertainty. It had ended with your person choosing clarity. But there was one detail you hadn't noticed yet. The message wasn't only about what your person felt. Hidden inside it was a reference to something their brother had said about you. Something your person had apparently never understood until that night. And when you reached that part of the message, you realized the secret discussion had uncovered something neither of them had originally expected. Because their brother hadn't simply encouraged your person to contact you. He had pointed out a truth about your connection that could explain why, despite everything, your person had never truly been able to let you go. The next line made you stop completely. Your person wrote that their brother had asked them a question they couldn't answer at first. Why do you keep coming back to the same person in your mind? It wasn't about obsession or some dramatic force pulling them together. It was something much quieter. Every time your person imagined their future, your present somehow found its way into the picture. They might have tried to distract themselves, focus on other things, or convince themselves that uncertainty meant they should move on. Yet somehow, the smallest things brought their thoughts back to you. A familiar place. A certain expression. A conversation they remembered word for word. Their brother told them that perhaps the reason was simpler than they had made it. Maybe you represented something they didn't easily find elsewhere: emotional safety, genuine understanding, and the feeling that they could be themselves without performing for anyone. Your person admitted that hearing this made them uncomfortable at first. Then they realized why. Their brother wasn't telling them what to feel. He was simply pointing out what they had already been showing through their actions. But the most surprising part came when your person described what happened after their brother said your name one final time. They suddenly remembered a moment when you had every reason to misunderstand them, yet you chose patience. At the time, your person barely acknowledged it. They acted as though it wasn't important. But now they understood that moment had stayed with them. Your person told their brother, "They didn't have to treat me that kindly." And their brother replied, "Exactly." That single word seemed to unlock something. Your person realized that they had spent too much time analyzing whether your connection was possible and not enough time appreciating why it had become meaningful in the first place. They weren't being asked to predict the future. They were being asked to be present enough to recognize what was already there. And that changed the way they looked at their phone, at your message history, even at the memories they had previously dism.